Welcome to this web seminar. Webinar as it is. My name's Phil Winters and I'll be joined by Dr. Rosaria Silipo, who will act as moderator for this session. Before we start, I guess I should answer the question, why the two of us? Well, between us we have over 40 years of combined SAS experience. I myself started using SAS in 1977 and was actually with SAS Institute as an employee for 25 years. So when you want to talk about SAS, I can talk about SAS. Rosaria is similar with many years of SAS experience. Over the last years, though, we've gotten to know another package known as KNIME, and that is exactly the point of this seminar. Leveraging SAS with KNIME and talking a little bit about the differences, the similarities, and how you can use both together. Before we get started, let me just welcome everybody to the webinar. We'd like everybody to be muted, so if you can make sure your headset is on mute, that would be great. Rosaria is on the chat the entire time, so if you have any questions about the webinar, things you need to know, want to ask, please do ask us those questions, and we'll try to make sure we take care of them. Very important for everyone before we start, you will get a link to the slides and to the workflow as well as the examples that I'm going to use. You'll be able to download those and have everything there. So what I'd like you to do now is sit back and relax. And as you can see from the map, we've got people from all over the world. Hey, for all you guys down under, I know this is a terrible time for you, but thanks for being there. Welcome also to the KNIME guys in Zurich and in the new KNIME office over in California. So hey guys, and a special welcome to the little red dot there. That's Cary, North Carolina. I can see that some of my friends and old colleagues from SAS are actually on the webinar as well. So hey guys, good to have you here. Since this is a webinar that's going to cover KNIME and SAS, I think it's important that we cover the official bits. SAS and all other SAS Institute product or service names are registered trademarks or trademarks of SAS Institute Incorporated in the USA and other countries. And as everybody knows, that's very important. So I'm going to talk about SAS and SAS products. They all belong to SAS Institute. Something else very important for this webinar, it is designed as a training session, and I just want to make sure everybody realizes that the opinions expressed here in the webinar are those of myself, Phil Winters, and do not represent any sort of statement by SAS Institute or by KNIME. This is really me talking to you about pulling the two together. So with all the official stuff out of the way and a tip of the hat to Cary, North Carolina, let's get on with the official seminar. Now, I've designed this really as a course, and I think that's important. You're going to have the webcast here, but you're also going to have example workflows or programs. You're going to get the data that goes with this and the slides, so you can really download all of this and try it. I'd like you all to do me a huge favor though. Please don't try this while I'm in the webinar. The reason for that, when you download and install the open source platform KNIME, you need to click on a couple of extra extensions. They don't cost you anything, but you need to know exactly where to click to install a couple of the extra things that I'm going to be showing you here today. And I'd hate to have you distracted if you're trying to do that during the webcast itself. So no worries, you're going to get everything. Let me tell you the goals of today's course. You know, first off, why are we having a course to leverage SAS with KNIME? You know, why is that important? I'm going to give just a very brief introduction for SAS users if you don't know KNIME and try to compare and contrast a little bit out of my experience. Then what I'm going to do is going to take a very concrete example, a next best offer example, and start showing you how to mix, match, and merge both of them. We're going to talk a little bit about packaging, reusing, and surfacing, combinations of SAS and KNIME to business users. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of my cheat sheet of how and when to start with KNIME if you've already got SAS. At the end, I'm going to have a lot of resources available to you, and as I said, you'll be able to download everything there. Does that sound okay, Rosaria? Does it look like everybody's online? Yeah, okay. Uh-huh. Okay, that looks good. Great. Let's just keep going. I think before we talk about KNIME, we need to talk about a little bit of the original concept behind SAS. You know, back in the mid-70s when SAS came out in 76, I started using it in 77, there was a basic concept behind SAS. And it was because of the frustration with lots of other programming languages at the moment. When you were trying to do something with data, you needed to go in and you needed to access that data, you needed to manipulate it and manage it, then you wanted to do something with it using analytics, statistics, and at the end of the day, you wanted to get it out. And this core concept was what drove SAS in the beginning, and to be honest, still drives SAS today. And at the time, it was absolutely brilliant. You know, some of the things that went into SAS at the time, particularly the data step, just an absolutely brilliant way of working. And I think many of us appreciate it, and there are still some very strong things in SAS that we like. What's happened, though, over the years is that there have been new requirements that came out. Lots of new technologies, lots of new things people wanted to do, and SAS has done a very good job of adding that new functionality into the core concept. They've done that through additional products, you know, everything from the engines, the DB2 Oracle engines, for example, the addition of the macro language. I still remember teaching the very first macro language course in Europe all those years ago. So, hey guys, you want to tokenize SAS tokens with me? I'm your guy. And all of the wonderful things we know that SAS has added over the years. And that's just kept going. There's now some really fantastic things that have been added in there. But I don't know about you, but you may be stuck in a little bit of a conundrum that I am. Let me tell you my story. I was working with a very major company in the UK, and they didn't have SAS. And to be honest, we weren't sure yet whether SAS was going to be the right thing or whether we wanted to even tackle this. And I needed to use something very, very focused for a couple of weeks. And to be honest, I couldn't get SAS. I didn't have access to it anymore, and this company was not going to put out this huge upfront amount of money for something that they weren't sure that they were going to use. So I was faced with the challenge that I needed to get in there and do some experimentation. I needed some choice, I needed some control, and I just couldn't do it. So I went out onto the market and took a look at what else was there. And to be honest, that was very, very, very difficult for me because, you know, I know SAS code, and started looking at some of the different options, some of the things with R, some of the other packages, and I came across this package called KNIME, which was an open source data mining platform. And it did the job for me really, really well. And the most exciting thing for me was, since it was open source on the desktop, I didn't have to pay anything to pick it up and start using it. Well, as I've worked with customers over the last 2 to 3 years, I keep hearing that same sort of story. Either maybe SAS is too big of a jump for us to begin with, or more importantly, we have SAS, but there's all these new things we want to try. New data sources, maybe pull in other applications, new challenges, new methods, some new science, some new infrastructure, some things we want to test, to try. Yes, maybe we could go to SAS and do it. It's always going to cost us a lot extra money. As we all know, every new proprietary piece from SAS is packaged into a new bundle, and with an unlimited budget, that can be fantastic. But in a lot of these new areas, people just weren't sure where they wanted to go. So I started using KNIME to help companies leverage their SAS, take a look at a lot of these new things, and give them some choice and control about how they move forward. Maybe they did that with SAS, but more and more they were continuing to leverage their SAS with KNIME, and that's what I'd like to show you a little bit there. So if you're in the situation where, as one SAS customer put it, I'm in the walled garden, and you need some ways of breaking out and maybe trying some different things for a change, that's exactly what this is designed to do. Now, for those of you that don't know KNIME, let me give you just a 2 to 3 minute summary of what KNIME is. It is an interactive GUI platform. This is KNIME. It is open source, and it's free on the desktop. Now, for me, the most important thing here is the open. KNIME was designed from the beginning to try to make it very easy for you to take in lots and lots and lots of other possibly open source or other tools and techniques that are out there and pull them in. What's happened is that this KNIME platform has become very, very robust and very easy to use. One of the things you're going to see here is the interactive interface, and you'll see elements of what may look a little bit like the Enterprise Miner product from SAS, great product, or maybe some of the other things like Jump or some of the interactive visualization things. Well, all of those things are included here, and it's actually in the open source platform, which can be downloaded and started. Something very important here. There is no code behind those little icons. We call them nodes. An icon is very strong. It can be configured. There's a lot in it. We're going to go into details in a moment, but there is no scripting. So one of the things I found as a SAS user was that it was very, very easy for me to get up and use the KNIME platform. First off, because I understood robust transformation and analytic tasks, that I'd learned how to do all of those in SAS, and second, because I didn't have to learn a new scripting language, because it's just all here. Now, I'd encourage you, if you don't know KNIME, at the end of this webinar, download what we've been doing and try it for yourself. After all, it's free. Now, it's really important for everybody on the webinar. I'm already getting some messages coming in saying, is KNIME better than SAS? Is SAS better than KNIME? That is absolutely not the purpose of this particular webinar. The question is not which is better. There's a lot of other organizations out there that have been doing comparisons of the different products across lots of criteria. You can go out and take a look at those themselves. And as a matter of fact, since KNIME is open source, you can download and start playing. I'm not going to answer the question which is better, because that's not really appropriate for here. There's enough big organizations right now out there talking about KNIME, everybody from the Novartises and the Deutsche Telekoms of the world all the way up to the Food and Drug Administration itself, which is now using KNIME. They can talk about this, which is better, or which is better for which application. What I'd like to do is share a little bit with you what I think is the big difference. I know SAS extremely well. Of course, I know KNIME extremely well. Over on the left, we've got SAS. This is the definition that actually comes from the SAS wiki, and I think it's pretty good. SAS is a script-oriented 4GL programming language that has 4 major components. We all know them. It's the data step, the procedures, the macro language, which sort of does all the metaprogramming for us in terms of packaging and redistributing, and the ODS, which allows us lots of ways of getting things out. On top of that, over the last years, SAS has done a very good job of bringing out new application and new GUIs that sit on top of SAS programming language to facilitate getting that written faster. Enterprise Miner and Enterprise Guide from SAS are probably 2 of the most famous ones having to do that. But it is the scripted-oriented 4GL programming language, and if we know SAS, that's one of the things we love about it. And as we see down there at the bottom, there's an example of a little data step and a little proctabulate. KNIME, on the other hand, is something really totally different. It's a script-free environment. There is no programming language. You will not see a semicolon anywhere in the KNIME package. It's a series of nodes and connectors where each node represents a task that might be accessing, it might be transformation, it might be analytics or presentation, and you combine those nodes and connectors together to form what is called workflows. And the workflow would be the equivalent of a SAS program. Now, something else that's different in KNIME, which I find very powerful, I'm going to show it to you later on, is the concept of a meta node. Whereas in SAS, to package and reuse code, we pretty much need to go to the macro language to do that. In KNIME, there's the concept of a meta node. You see, in KNIME, every single piece of information available in a node is available over something called a flow variable, and we can package and combine nodes and connectors so that we can make all those things shareable. A big difference between KNIME and SAS is there is no scripting language, there is no one question mark possible. Instead, you build your workflows using the interactive GUI. And last but not least, I think there's a philosophical difference, and it's a pretty major philosophical difference. Back in the mid-70s, when SAS first came out, SAS was required to do everything through proprietary technology. There wasn't anything else, so they needed to build proprietary technology to do the fantastic things that SAS started doing back in the 70s. And the idea was, through that proprietary technology, we can provide it all. And that's sort of the concept that's still followed by SAS today, as they build and add and continue expanding the SAS platform. On the KNIME side, though, there's a big difference in that the philosophy is, through a strong open source platform, we can provide it all. It should be very, very easy to go out and include things from other platforms or possibly other tools or packages that are available to get that last little bit that you might need in the platform that possibly the platform doesn't provide for yourself. So a different style and a different philosophy. I think it's really important for people to understand that style and philosophy, because if you do, it becomes a little easier to switch from SAS to KNIME. Now, don't let this freak you out. There's a very good book available, downloadable for free, to help SAS users convert to KNIME, and I'll be able to reference that to you later in the webcast. But first, let me just finish with a little diagram of KNIME. You see on the left, data access, transformation, analyze and mining, visualization and deployment. Within the free desktop version of KNIME open source, there are currently over 1,000 native and embedded nodes for just about everything you can think about. As a matter of fact, that huge list down at the bottom, everything from machine learning to text mining to social media to web crawlers, absolutely everything that's on there in black is free and is embedded in the open source version. So if for no other reason, you might want to take a look at KNIME, because maybe there's some package you've been looking at with some sort of extra thing, and you're not quite sure whether you're ready to spend the money on that package. Well, you could pull down and use KNIME to actually go touch a lot of those extra topics. Naturally, there's also commercial extensions to KNIME. Those are in red, but pretty much all of today I'm going to focus on the open source version as we start mixing and mastering SAS and KNIME. So let's get down in concrete. That's enough about KNIME and the KNIME platform. For all of us that know both a little bit, let me get into something very concrete. Now, everybody knows that my speciality is customer intelligence, and when I work with KNIME or SAS or anyone else, that's really my focus area. So naturally, for this webinar, I'm going to focus on my speciality, and we're going to focus on a customer data example, and it's going to be a classic one called the next best offer. The reason I've chosen that one is because there's usually a variety of tasks we have to do: accessing data, consolidating and transforming, exploring and visualizing, doing lots and lots of things to do some cool predictive things, and at the end of the day we need to deploy. Now, as every person knows, you could do this entire thing in SAS if you had all of the relevant products, and those that know KNIME know you can do it all in KNIME as well. But what I'd like to show for new KNIME users is how you can start mixing and matching of these in an interesting way. Let's start here with the example. In the middle you see a workflow, and that workflow is something that you will get to be able to download. Over on the left you see that huge range of nodes available. pretty much anything KNIME can read and write, and that reading SAS node that you see that I've highlighted there, that's a special node. It takes an extra click to install it. It was provided by the community. That's the cool thing about KNIME. Everybody contributes things, and this is Ocean View Consulting in the UK, which provided this, and it is really good because it reads just about any type of SAS data set out there. It's very easy to configure by right-clicking on the node. You get the little pop-up window over on the right where you can just enter your SAS dataset name wherever it might be, and with one click you can pull that information in, and you can see that on the screen. Now what's interesting about this is I've actually done this not just for SAS, but I've done it for a lot of other types of data as well. I've pulled in sentiment data, text data that was processed by KNIME, where we use the famous sentiment analysis in the open source KNIME to pull in data. I've used an Excel reader to read in an Excel table. I've used a file reader, a very dynamic tool for reading in all sorts of flat files. And I've used a database reader. I think here I've used the tiny SQL database, just so that I can make sure and get everybody this example in a working state. And you can see how we've walked through and pulled that information together. One of the great things about KNIME is that as you connect things and run each individual step, as it goes from red to yellow to green, which means successfully completed, you can take a look at the data that comes out of every single node at any step. You can stop and save everything in intermediate steps, and you can basically slowly build everything up. What's nice is that if you have one little piece that you're still working on, you don't have to throw away all of the calculations to date. They're all there for you to continue. And here you can, down in the lower right hand corner, you can see a listing where I've right clicked and opened that data. That's my SAS data that's been moved into KNIME. Now you see the yellow nodes. Those are the data manipulation nodes, and there's a tremendous variety of nodes, and I'm not going to go into the details here. Needless to say, I think it's pretty good. For those of us that have grown up with a scripting language such as PL1 or SAS's DataStep or Fortran or C or something like that, it takes a little while to get used to, because what you do is you basically put together strings of nodes. But I guarantee you it's very, very, very efficient. I'm using this on my laptop on millions of records without a problem, and I find it quite convenient for mixing and matching data from different data sources. Am I trying to get you to switch to KNIME for ETL? No. If you know DataStep and that's what you love the best, absolutely use it. But for those users where maybe they're not up to speed with SAS code, or maybe you're going to deliver them the data after a complex series of data and macro steps, this might be an easier way for them to do some of the basic things that they want to do. What I like about this is there's no separate programming step required. We can actually go in and mix and match all of these nodes in any way we want for transforming data. Now, many of you in SAS are going to say, whoa, wait a minute, Phil, that means we can end up with incredibly large workflows, lots of nodes, looks complicated, looks hard to maintain. Well, yes, the node sequences can get very big, just as series of SAS steps can get very big. But one of the really nice things I like about KNIME is the way that you can encapsulate and package workflows. You can see here on the screen what I've done is I've quickly dragged and marked all of my nodes, and I've right-clicked, which pulls up a pop-up window, and there I have something called collapse into metanode. What that's going to do is that's going to collapse everything into a container, a metanode container, and that metanode container can be copied and reused in various ways. As a matter of fact, we can actually parameterize things into it as well. But using this concept of a metanode, it means you can mix normal nodes and metanodes very, very clearly, keep your code very, very clean, keep it well, nice and documented, and I like it. What it means is no macro language. There is no macro language required to do any of this meta packaging whatsoever. And you see that on the next slide. The next best offer is something that's really, really powerful. And of course, we have to go through data access and transformation. And there over on the far left, you see that access transformation node that we built in the previous slide. If I double clicked on that meta node, I would see that code. I could go in and modify it. But you see here, it's very, very clean. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk you through different sections of this, and this is where I start interactive and mixing and mingling with SAS itself. The very first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on another meta node, and it's called extra there in the middle, and when I click on that, what I'm given is an additional workflow. You can see the data is coming in on the left, you can see it's going out on the right, and the first thing I'd like to point out is that even within KNIME, fantastic nodes for transformation, pivoting, summarizing, doing lots of things to data that are very, very, very easy. To be honest, in some cases a lot easier than in some of the SAS traditional procedures, and I'd urge you to take a look at some of those. Over on the far right, I'm also doing some things for later on use when I'm interactively interrogating the data, and I'm going to apply some color to some of the attributes. One thing I would like to point here, though, in the over on the right, are a couple of things that I've included. You see, because KNIME is an open platform, you can go and choose your favorite external packages if that is the way you want to manipulate your data. If you love Java, no problem. Use a Java snippet. If you love Python, no problem. If you love MATLAB or SQL in your favorite database, or you want to have some sort of a REST application, do all of these things, there's lots and lots and lots of ways for you to grab on to your existing skill set if there's some sort of complex transformation that you need to do. And I think that's really, really powerful. I'm not a Java freak myself, but I know people that can code Java better than they can code data step. And this sort of gives you the capability of mixing and matching those external packages and languages as well. But all you SAS guys are going to be sitting here looking at that up at the top, because you can probably see SAS through there. So let me show you this section as well. When it comes to SAS, KNIME has the ability to call any external package either locally or remotely, and that's exactly what I've done here. I'm calling SAS both locally and remotely. I can pass SAS automatically the data that's coming through from my KNIME workflow. And the fantastic thing about KNIME is I can automatically capture the SAS data that comes back and feed it back into my workflow to continue. Now, obviously, that opens up all sorts of possibilities for us for mixing and matching our favorite things in SAS with our favorite things in KNIME, using KNIME to sort of control and drive that particular application. Now, I've done one other thing here because I think it's very powerful. Naturally, this section on mine is not run. I do not have a licensed copy of SAS on my local machine, therefore I can't show this to you, but in the example I've built it up so you can see it yourself. Over on the left, I've put in two things. They're called quick forms. You see, every single thing in KNIME is driven by what's called a flow variable, and all of that flow information is available at the meta level. And I'm going to actually put two switches in there so I can automatically decide, is SAS available locally or remotely, or is SAS available first, and then is it available locally or remotely? Why am I doing that? Well, because of a fantastic feature in the meta node that you can see here. Here you see the little extra node that I had before. What I've done is I've right-clicked. I see a configuration window, exactly as I would see a configuration window for any other node in KNIME. And when I click on that configuration node, I see a dialog that is automatically created for me from those quick form nodes. A dialog where I can click and say, is SAS available, yes or no? And if it is, do I want to run it remotely or locally? This is the sort of thing that I really like for speeding up program control flow. There's no macro code, no Java, no SCL, no other programming language, this nice dialog window. What it means is that you can start bringing quite complex things together, KNIME combined with SAS and others, and you can drive some of the decisioning very simply through these dialog windows, these configuration windows, which means you can start giving it to people who are possibly less good at SAS than you are to let them drive their way through the particular application. Something very powerful. Now, the next thing I wanted to highlight is something that SAS has always been very, very good at. There's some great visualization tools you can license in some of the additional packages at SAS, but maybe you're not quite to the point that you want to go license all those packages yet. And as we all know, most of us have base SAS and SAS Graph and SAS Statistics, and we may not have access to some of those cool visualization tools. Well, in KNIME, there are a large number of visual and exploration nodes available. And what that means is that when you open those on the screen, they are all linked to each other. You can visually go through, click, mark, highlight any information. That information is picked up on all of the other nodes that you have open. You can actually save that information and use it later for some sort of subsetting. This is not a separate package. We can, of course, take this much further and have you go into other commercial packages, but I like the way of just starting this. This is going to be very good for SAS users who don't have the advanced tools and either want to try this on new SAS data they have, or possibly when they first start merging SAS with other data sources. So I just wanted to highlight this because it's something that each one of us can start using very, very, very quickly. But let's go to the heart of the KNIME platform, and that is the open platform itself. Here I've got the example where I'm actually going through and calculating a next best model. One of the big debates I always get into in these projects is which technique is the best. And as we all know in today, there's 20 or 30 different techniques, and you can get very religious about the techniques, but I'd rather keep it very simple. In this example, I've actually taken 5 different models, 2 of them from KNIME, both a decision tree and a logistic regression. I've actually automatically, the R system, by the way, KNIME does have R automatically built into it in the open source version for free, and in this example I'm going to use an R decision tree. In addition, I pull in a PMML model. That's the famous modeling language, the well-defined open standard modeling language. In this particular case, I'm pulling in a model from SPSS. I would have pulled one in from SAS, but as all of the SAS forums knows, the PMML from SAS is not really standard, so it gets a little, you need to do some pre-processing before you can read it in. And then at the end of the day, I can pull in anything else. I can pull in any of the weaker routines. I can pull in other really advanced techniques, such as the new uplift nodes, which are, of course, a fantastic technique if you're in marketing doing campaigns. These uplift nodes are community nodes that were contributed courtesy of one of the strong KNIME partners called Dymetrics. Or last but not least, definitely, is SAS itself. We can actually call SAS code as well. So if I wanted to run any of the SAS procedures or even call Enterprise Miner, I could do that. Now, I'm going to drill into one of these just so that you can see it's not simply clicking on a proc. I could, of course, go in and just hook a node and run it. Here's an example of the decision tree. But as we all know, in good decision science, we need to do some things over and over again. We usually want to go in and partition the data, and do very solid best practices in terms of how we use the different routines to split up into partitions, use some of the data for learning, some of the data for predicting, aggregate everything back together. All of those things are possible in KNIME, and here's just one little example, but the partitioning, the binning, the bagging, boosting, logic, cross-validation, feature elimination, all of the things that you would want to do are available in KNIME. The most important thing is they're not only available in KNIME, but you can use them with the other packages. So you can use it with R, you can use it with Weka, you can use it with all of the KNIME things, and if you wanted to, you could even use it with SAS. And that makes it very, very, very powerful. Great examples available on the website at KNIME, showing all the different techniques, but this is something very good. And notice we haven't had to do any scripting here. We just need to know how to connect the appropriate nodes. I'm going to move on to the next section, which is reporting. Obviously, if you have a great platform that's taking lots of things in and is very open to the way you manipulate, you need to be very open to the way you get out. Now, KNIME is purposely not trying to be the world's do-all, end-all, interactive, in-memory, slicer, dicer. There's some great packages out there. SAS has got some. There's also Spotfire. There's also ClickView. There's some great tools out there that KNIME can automatically feed. But if you don't have any of those commercial tools and you do need to get really good reports out, KNIME has built in the famous BERT tool. The Business Intelligence Reporting tool. It's the open source BI tool. We've built that in, and as you can see here, you can do some pretty cool reporting and things on that as well. And that's a great way of also doing your production reports. So what we tried to do is make it very flexible at KNIME to do all of this. I really like the way that KNIME's done this for people, making it, giving you the flexibility. Last but not least, when it comes to integrating KNIME and SAS together, we've really got to talk about deploying. Because as we all know, the best model in the world is not any good unless you can deploy. So in the KNIME package, the guys have done a great job of giving a variety of different tools to make it easy to actually use the model. You can, of course, score data in KNIME itself, or you can reach out to your favorite database, including Hadoop, also in the open source version, and actually run the scoring of the data there. Alternately, if the database allows PMML to be used within the database natively, or for example, you want PMML to be used by another system, we have a PMML writer so that the model can go out. There's a great package out there known as Adapa from Cementis, which can pick up PMML and even run it in real time, doing all sorts of real-time execution with it. So a lot of different ways of getting this modeling out, whether it be KNIME or KNIME combined with SAS, and getting it out with some pretty unique ways. Last but not least, I'm going to mention a new node that's out there that I really like. How do you get really cool models back into SAS? Maybe you don't have Enterprise Mimer, maybe you don't have the model manager and some of the advanced functionalities, you just have good old base SAS. Well, again, the Dimetrics company has written a node that converts a PMML model into the equivalent proc SQL code, which means that you can go back into SAS and use SAS to score any complicated model you've come up with, and it will do it accurately. Now you can imagine turning a model into SQL can get pretty hairy, and it can be a pretty long program, but since it's SAS, it's very efficient. One of the things I'd like to point out here is that I find KNIME really good for getting things out. There's a lot of options in the open source, and of course there's also some commercial options for doing it better. The options in yellow are commercial, and everything else in the orange is in the open source. Obviously, we've got to actually get the data out in other ways as well, not just the model. Lots of things we can do. I've used KNIME to write back to database, flat files, to do all sorts of things. I guess the basic ones, though, are writing back out to Excel, writing all the data back out in an XML format. This is fantastic if you've got web applications or web APIs that need to pick things up, or writing it directly back to SAS. Now, we all know that the SAS dataset format is proprietary, and SAS upgrades it and changes it quite a lot, and it is not documented anywhere. Thank you, SAS. But there's some ways around that. One thing is to use the official, well-documented SAS transport dataset format. And I'd like to thank the community over there in the R community, because we've just grabbed onto their famous little package to make sure that you can write out a SAS transport dataset from anywhere within KNIME. And for those SAS geeks among us, you'll recognize the file over on the right. Yes, indeed, that is a SAS transport dataset. So basically what I've tried to do is show you all of the different ways that you can go and start mixing and matching SAS with KNIME if you're a power user. But I think there's another aspect that's worth mentioning, and that is if you're another type of user. Of course, if you're a developer, there's always been a bit of a challenge with SAS in terms of wrapping somebody else's software. Of course, there's a package to do that, but you can't really see inside it very well sometimes. At least that's what I remember. And of course, in KNIME, there is a complete SDK environment for taking anybody's existing code and wrapping a KNIME node around it, meaning that then KNIME takes over some of the fantastic things it can do in terms of memory management, I/O, etc., etc. Oh, just a slight aside before I forget, everyone always asks, hang on, how does KNIME do it? KNIME is very, very similar to SAS in that it balances I/O with memory. It buffers things. There's a lot of control that happens. By default, KNIME and SAS both believe that slamming things totally in memory is not always the best thing to do, and that you need to be able to leverage all the resources available. And KNIME has done that, in my opinion, very well. What I've shown you to date, however, is everything for the power user. What happens when we start getting teams of users? Well, that's where we start coming into KNIME's commercial software, and everybody asks me as the independent guy, come on, Phil, there's got to be a trick here. How does KNIME make money? Well, mine makes money off the server. All of the functionality I've been talking about till now is in the open source version on the desktop. But when you start having teams of people that want to use it, where, for example, we can take those metanodes and check them into a shared repository where they can be instantiated across users, applications, workflows, where you want to be able to check in, check out, do all that sort of enterprise server sort of stuff. That's where KNIME has added the extra functionality to the commercial software in what's the KNIME server. You absolutely do not need it, but at some point it makes sense for larger organizations to take advantage of all of these things, from remote execution, scheduling, to the interaction with those repositories. I find the repositories fantastic because it's a way of self-documenting and sharing workflow subcomponents, and it works really, really well. What it means is that an expert could write a metanode, check it into a repository, configure that with quick forms. That could be available to any, possibly not quite as an experienced user or a business user. They could instantiate a copy, they would instantiate that into their workflow. In other words, it would not really be there because it would be pulled in from the server. They could use that portion of the workflow. They'd never need to know what was happened, but they could then use the nodes that they do understand. If the common copy needed to be updated, it could be updated, and every workflow that references that metanode in the repository would automatically be uploaded. That is something that, in terms of maintainability and upgradability, I find to just be fantastic. One other thing I'm going to mention about business consumers, we all have the challenge with any package that we want to surface it onto the web. A lot of companies, SAS included, have introduced other packages to build the website and interact with the scripting language. Well, at KNIME, they've taken a little different approach, and I think it's brilliant, to be honest. Remember those quick forms I showed you before, where it automatically creates you a little configuration window when you're working interactively in the GUI? Well, that exact same node surfaces it to you in a web application. This little screen you're seeing here is not a web application built in some sort of Java or HTML, etc., etc., etc. Rather, it is a KNIME application that has been checked into the server, told to become a web application, and those fields have appeared here automatically. You can actually make quite complex application interactions, giving your end users the ability to drive the application and come up with their results, either download them, use them interactively, or have the reports at the end. I think it's pretty slick, and particularly for those of us where we may not have enough SAS programmers, because SAS programmers take a long time to get trained. They're experts at the end of the day, but it takes a while. I think combining KNIME with SAS gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of the type of people you can hire, because they don't have to know all of those scripting languages. Last but not least, you can embed it in the commercial environment. The ability to use security and user rights, be able to call from other applications, etc., etc. Those are all components of the commercial software, and quite frankly, that's how KNIME makes its little bit of money. But what I'd like to summarize here for you really quickly is the question when to use KNIME and when to use SAS. Well, anytime you have new data sources and you don't have the appropriate engines in SAS, maybe it's time to check out KNIME. When there's a new method and you either haven't purchased the appropriate method or you just want to see what it looks like in another package, such as KNIME itself, or maybe R, or maybe something else, like to compare and contrast in text. Or for example, you're going to start some experiments with text mining or networking or imaging or things like that. Then maybe it's time to pick up KNIME and start learning some of those techniques, because they're all available in the open source. New approaches. A lot of the ways of changing the way models are created and done are good. And as I pointed out, when you have new groups of users who need to use the package and aren't possibly skilled in the underlying code, macro code, etc., etc., maybe that's a way to do it. And there's also some hot topics that I'm going to cover very quickly. But as one big SAS customer told me, well, maybe I need to look at KNIME before I just automatically spend money. And I think that's a very good point. Let me quickly rattle through a couple of topics. Hot topics with KNIME users and SAS users. Maybe you're doing all of these things, but maybe there's some of them you haven't yet started, and they might be a good place for KNIME. Credit scoring, credit rating, customer risk, everything I show you here is actually an excellent example. These are downloadable. The data is there. You can get starting immediately. There's over 200 different examples up on the KNIME server at the moment. Quite frankly, that's how I learned KNIME. Downloaded a few of these, hooked to my SAS data, and off I went. Hot topic, social media. All sorts of examples for starting to pull social media. There's a brand new white paper. Rosaria, I guess I can mention this. It's fantastic. Rosaria has just put a white paper together showing how you can use open source nodes to actually do the sniffing and capturing of social media data as well. Yep, that means we can go in and read wiki and the tweets and everything, pull them into KNIME and start manipulating them to do social media analysis. Excellent, excellent, excellent examples, and a brand new white paper that just came out a couple of days ago. Rosaria, it's great. Text mining, it's not just about social media data. Anything we have that's in machine readable form, and once again there's some great examples on the KNIME site. This is a great way to learn text mining. One of the things that all of us SAS experts will know is that at some point it's just data manipulation and normal statistics again. But until we get there, there's a huge series of things you need to do to text to get it in the right form, and I like some of the KNIME examples for showing how to do that. Once again, open source. Network analysis, it's not good to just know if it's good or bad. You need to know what's the how important it is, and there's some great network and analysis open source examples available for downloading as well. My favorite example, combining text and network mining, quite a complex process, but you can learn a tremendous amount. And by the way, you can download this example, and if you wanted to, change the source data. Examples for recommendation engine are there, examples for real-time scoring, where we go out and not only do some of the scoring, but then we use a third-party package called Cementis, and there's a white paper there that shows you all how to do that. Cementis actually gives you a little bit of a free access to one of their real-time scoring capabilities called ADAPA as well. Highly recommend you take a look at that if you're moving towards that area. And the last topic for me, which goes far beyond the individual analyst. A lot of companies have been coming to me and talking about the term big. For me, it's not just a question of big data. It's a question of automating everything. This is something very, very different than Model Manager from SAS. This is the way of totally automating the complete process of creating, generating a model, scoring the model, and automatically tuning the model so that you can literally have hundreds of models running at the same time, all automatically without any sort of contribution of the analyst. What does that mean? That means I, as an analyst, can spend all of my time analyzing and not putting together lots of production models like this. Something I can highly recommend that's done with the KNIME server, and it's done by an interesting package called KNIME. Go check it out. I'm doing this right now with Which in the UK. For everyone not from the UK, you'll know this as the Consumer Reports of the UK. And at the moment, we're running 1,271 televisions that get modeled every day. Not just scored, but modeled. And it's all done in a very efficient time window so that we can actually come back and tell a consumer, is the price that's currently available a good price? Is it going to go up or is it going to go down? And it's all done with the KNIME platform. Absolutely fantastic hot topic for the future. Would recommend everybody go take a look at it. Hot topics, big data. This is pretty much where I'm going to wrap it up. On the KNIME platform, because it's open, there's a couple of choices. First off, you can get to and use a lot of the big data sources. Hadoop, you can go through Hive, Pig, etc., through the open source platform and get to that. When you actually move it into KNIME itself and start doing the manipulation, a lot of times you're going to find that KNIME is incredibly efficient. I'm running on my laptop. Yes, it's a good laptop. It's got an i7 4-core processor, but I'm running just native KNIME, and I am constantly running a couple of million records, doing incredibly complex manipulation and data mining out, no problem. So KNIME scales very, very well. When you get to the point where you really want to use the extra infrastructure you have, for example, the distributed infrastructure, or actually run the algorithms on Hadoop, there's a very, very interesting extension to KNIME from Axion Corporation, which makes the Data Rush product. It's an engine that sits inside of KNIME and automatically takes over for the majority of nodes, the I/O, and it actually does that distribution that you would want. It knows what sort of hardware you've got, it knows whether you're full Hadoop or not, and it can do that. Now, obviously, that's not a free software product. That's a commercial software product from Axion, but it fits in very well into the KNIME platform. And what I like is, in KNIME, you can mix and match all of the different things. It's not like you must go to the big data option or you must stay in KNIME. You can freely mix and match those nodes. Pretty cool. So that's the big summary for KNIME and for SAS users. I hope I've given you some options and some ideas of how you might want to include KNIME into your SAS environment and maybe start leveraging some of these cool things. I strongly recommend just downloading KNIME. Remember, KNIME doesn't require you even to register for the darn thing. You can just download and start using it tomorrow. How to start? My summary: download it. You can install some of the extensions. I'll show you how to do that on the next slide. There's a fantastic book on introducing KNIME to SAS users, written by Dr. Rosario Silipo and an introduction by myself, where we've tried to really help hook up the two philosophies to make it easy. We're going to give you this download and install to do, and just start enjoying being free to choose. Remember, at KNIME, there's no registration and no fees, no artificial limitations on that desktop version. The only thing you do have to do is, if you want to combine it with SAS, you do need to have your licensed version of SAS, obviously, if you want to use it with KNIME. Further resources, you'll get the slides. Everyone that was signed up for the webcast will get an email with all of the slides and with this information for further information. If you need to know more about the basic KNIME itself, there's some great additional videos on YouTube. And last but not least, in your email from me, you will get specific details on the extensions you need to be able to run the example. For example, you need to click on a box to install the R extension. You need to click on a box to install the SAS dataset extension. You need to install a tiny SQL driver, etc., etc. And you'll get that all from me. I guess with that, we've come to the end of the webcast. I think I've answered all the questions that popped up on the screen. We're going to be around for a few minutes more, so if you want to enter a question, we'll try to chat back and forth to you. And if not, it's been a pleasure having all of you today. Thank you very much, and enjoy KNIMing.